If there's one thing I've learned from watching the Rees-Mogg reality TV show, is how the rich exploit women. It's clear that Jacob Rees-Mogg is very comfortable being a man baby, while his household is surrounded by women, pandering to his every need. It was very interesting to see how the upper class still end up running around, women end up running around after the children, while men like Jacob get to swan around completely oblivious because he can afford to be, because his wife is picking up all the physical and emotional labor. Here he is in the Houses of Parliament, just reclining, laughing it off, because again, this is his ethos. He gets to live in La La Land, thinking that everything's fine and that everything's easy. But I've seen the stress on Helena's face. I've seen the stress on the face of his nanny and the stress on the women in his life as they run around catering to his every whim, making sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, while he gets to, just pursue any flight and fancy that he can dream of. Here he is again, making that reclining posture a running joke in the family home. It's all fun and games, yeah, good PR, nothing to it, right? Okay, let's keep going. So the family have 6 children, okay? And watching the TV show, borderline documentary, really. It was interesting to see Helena running around after the kids, particularly the younger 3. These younger 3 right here. Alfred and Sixtus were adorable, by the way. But that's not the point. Let's keep going. Now, Helena herself is set to inherit about 45 million quid, right? She comes from a long line of aristocrats. Through her, they have original Van Dyck paintings. They have a vast art collection. They have properties in England, Ireland, America. And she's set to inherit the most compared to Jacob. I mean, Jacob's total value isn't 45 million. So she's actually worth more than him. And yet, because she chose to be a mother, and because they both agreed on having, they wanted a large family, things weren't distributed evenly, okay? She ended up picking up most of the slack, along with his nanny, of course. So the nanny, she's been with the Rees-Moggs for 59 years. Like, she's given, here she is right there, 59 years of her life to the Rees-Moggs. Here she is with young Jacob as a boy. She was his nanny first. And he said, you know what, you're so great at your job. Why don't you just stay and be the nanny for my kids too? And she was like, sure. She was even asked in the documentary, did you ever consider having your own kids? And she was like, oh, I never even thought about it. I never even dreamed of having my own kids. It was never on my mind because I was so busy picking up after this guy and his kids now. And I'm not saying she didn't love the job. Of course, you must love the job to invest 60 years of your life to it. But that doesn't mean it comes without stress. That doesn't mean it doesn't come without labor. And given the amount of labor that she has to carry out as a woman in her, 70s, that was quite shocking to me, honestly. She's running around after, 6 and 7-year-old boys, Alfred and Sixtus, while Jacob, sips wine and goes about on his campaign trails, what he did back when he was in Parliament, or goes around doing whatever he wants to do. There was one scene where they went out to dinner, the family. The nanny wasn't there, but it was just the family, and one of the kids spilled red wine on Jacob's suit. It was a white suit that he was wearing, and he was completely unfazed by it. His wife was like, oh my gosh, is your suit okay? And he was like, it will survive. It'll be fine. Because in his mind, he's thinking the nanny will get to it. The nanny will take care of it, or whichever woman in the household will get that clean and get that stain out. Jacob's admitted to being a walkover. He's admitted to being a soft dad. And he can afford to be. While Helena has to be the hard parent. And she's the one trying to enforce the rules. She's the one who ends up having to run around disciplining the kids, pleading with them to behave. Because little boys are, they're not exactly well behaved all the time. They're a little bratty, if I'm being honest. And you might say, well, that's just kids. Yeah, that is just kids. But, where's the fatherly influence in that? He says he likes to say yes to everything that the kids want. And meanwhile, Helena's the one who always has to be the one to say no. Here he is pretending to be, man of the year. You can tell he's never held a wheelbarrow in his life. Look at how awkwardly he's holding it. They make their own cider on the estate, of course. Well, the women make their own cider, But it's always been about him. It's always been about him. His life is only about him, really. His wife even rattled off a list of the things that he cares most about in life. It's like Catholicism, history, politics. Oh, and us, she added at the end. Jacob comes from a long line of posh toffs for whom the male was always centered. And so this is what he knows. This is his life. And she knows that as well because she grew up in the same aristocratic environment where man is king and the man is served. Man is center. And that's why she's quite happy to go along with it, even though it does cause her some duress. There was one time when his daughter, Mary, asked him for a duck pond. Okay, she wanted to keep up with the Joneses, or the Johnsons, as the case may be, Boris and Carrie Johnson. She wanted a duck pond, right? So daddy's like, oh yeah, no problem. Let's get, he goes out there with his caretaker, surveying the land and making, these visionary plans. And then he goes, there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape that we're going to have to work through. Cut to him telling his PA, who's a woman, you're going to need to get rid of that red tape for me. Can you do all the legwork? Can you do all the paperwork and all the chasing and, getting all the permissions and everything? So she does that. And she comes back and presents him with the findings and what needs to be done. And he's like, I can't even be bothered. He just couldn't be bothered. So he just scrapped it. He scrapped it. It wasn't for him. It was for Mary. But he still scrapped it. Because at the end of the day, he was never really that committed to it. He just likes to say yes until it gets hard, basically. So while he gets to swan around doing all these great photo ops, being Father of the Year, the reality is quite different. I mean, for Helena to be worth 45 million and to still be picking up after Jacob, that just goes to show you the depth to which the patriarchy runs, even in the upper echelons. Just in case you forgot, here he is again in full view, reclining during a live session in the Houses of Parliament. Jacob's a controversial figure, okay? He's a controversial figure, particularly because of his politics, but now, in my mind, because of his patriarchal mentality. I mean, he really can't see outside of that. And you could argue that it's not his fault. I mean, he's a staunch Catholic. He's used to rules and regulations and draconian laws, and that just carries on into his personal life. And the alarming thing is that his young boys are growing up with that example as well, and he's surrounded by a bunch of yes women who cater to and reward even that behavior. Here he is as a young boy doing what he's always loved to do, and that is being a man of leisure. Okay, here he is reading a newspaper. He was really into politics. He enjoyed it, and he's never really grown up from that. Except now, these teddies have been replaced by the women in his life. He has every comfort imaginable, and it's never occurred to him to put his wife and children first. I also think he looks a lot like Softy Walter from, the Beano. And I wasn't the only one who thought so, because apparently the Beano wrote to him, sending him a cease and desist letter, asking him to stop impersonating Softy Walter. How crazy is that?